All right, we should be live with this week's Q&A. I don't know if I posted it correctly, so hopefully folks join us. But in the meantime, how are you doing, Brandon?
Knock on rocks, pretty good. We're about to get drowned here, I guess, with rain. I know folks down in southern western Washington have been having some just unbelievably horrible mudslides, flooding. Just hope everybody's safe down there. So yeah, just trying to stay out of it, trying to stay out of the weather. And I took my oldest over and helped your dad clean up a bunch of alders yesterday. That was good.
Nice.
That was really good for Malik. That was great. Yeah, what's new with you? Anything?
Well, we got a puppy.
Yeah.
I've always been a medium to big dog guy, and my daughter's been she's 6. She's been kind of had some bad experience with dogs, so we ended up getting a little dog this time, which is a little bit of a trip, but maybe I'll meet him. He might cruise in here at some point, but
right on.
Having a puppy is a lot of work again. So
yeah,
but it's been fun. Yeah. So other than that, in my grow room, I've released the dog pics. Yes, I will. I'll find some dog pics for you guys as we get into this for sure. In my grow room, I'm dealing with thrips. They got out of control. I didn't get it under control in time. And so I'm going to harvest. I'm at day 55. I just put up a short where I was in my room that I've shot today, talking about what living soil doesn't fix, what it isn't, how it doesn't, what it isn't for, what it doesn't do for folks. And so that was kind of a fun just topic. But yeah, I went ahead and defoliated pretty heavily based on your advice, and then have slowly lowered the temperatures, just shut off the water for the blue mats to start prepping for harvest. So yeah, overall, I think the crop turned out pretty good considering the thrips pressure. And that's about it on my end.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. I've got on that same topic. I did get a nice or a good email that might be helpful for other folks right before we got on here. And it was somebody asking for the dip rates for EpiShield. I think everybody knows the dip rates, the Canadian labels for Suff Oil are 30 mils. But for EpiShield, the dip rate is 2.7 mils per gallon.
Well, why don't we back up a sec and talk about what EpiShield is?
Okay.
In case anyone's not familiar with it, though I feel like most people that tune into us now have probably heard of it. What is EpiShield? What's in it?
So
why do we like it?
Is something that you could use in place of Monterey or Suff Oil. It's a spray that has a soap and it has essential oils in it. It's particularly effective on aphids. I love it. My wife doesn't get mad when I spray because I spray in the house and out in the grow room as well. And I get a lot of complaints from growers about that ammonia smell from Suff Oil. I don't even notice it, but she always walks in and she's like, "Oh, it smells great in here. What'd you do?" And she thinks I just got out of the shower or something because it smells like Dr. Bronner's rose peppermint soap or something. And so it's got a 0 REI. So that just means that you don't have to worry about workers coming in contact with it. If you run in a facility, if you're running at home, you don't have to worry about, it being safe around family and pets and that kind of stuff. And so, you can spray and you don't have to leave. I always wear some sort of mask when I'm doing a spray, just because I don't want to inhale any atomized anything unless it's cannabis. And so I'm uptight about it. I had a friend of mine giving me hell about it this weekend. He's like, "That's not going to be airborne." And I'm like, "Yeah, but it won't spray up in my face either by accident if I have a mask on too." So I'm a little over the top on it. You definitely don't need to wear a mask for PPE for EpiShield. It's super safe. It's got, for veggie folks, it's got a 0 pre-harvest interval. And so much lower application rates as well, and works really well in a wide range of temperatures and humidities. You don't want to be doing it when it's crazy hot, like over 90 is the recommended cutoff, and then over 90% relative humidity. And the key with that, with any kind of oils, you want them to dry pretty quickly. So you don't want to do it in a super humid room because you can get phytotoxicity. So that is another note, because I've done lots of dipping with suff oil, and same note, you would want that to dry quickly. We don't get any kind of phytotoxicity under a dome, though, and so obviously it's not. But also that's because it's under what, 100 ppfd maybe, and so that may be why we're not seeing it in the cloning side of things. But that would be a really safe rate at 2.7 mils per gallon with the EpiShield.
So a couple things about EpiShield. You mentioned the REI. REI stands for return entry interval. It's how long you're supposed to wait after spraying whatever it is you spray before you come back into that space. So, places like Disneyland or hotels, they can't spray a lot of pesticides because the public needs to come into there, or workers or things like that. So that's what's really nice about this product. It's a 25B product, which means it doesn't require EPA registration like neem oil, Suff Oil X, some of these other products do, because all the ingredients are safe. There's other 25B products like Lost Coast Therapy, Plant Coast, whatever that product is, Plant Coast Therapy. Dr. Zymes would be another example. The reason we like EpiShield is because it has a lot of data and research behind it. It was developed by an entomologist, and BioWorks, the company that is selling it and formulated it with this entomologist, is just one of the top biological companies. When it comes to microbes and pesticides, these guys are really the top of the ag world, in my opinion.
It's the Cornell Ag Department. You can't beat it.
They're great. So that's why we like EpiShield. And the one other key difference between EpiShield and some of those other products is the application rate. So the concentrations that you're using are so small to get very good efficacy, very good mortality and kill rates. And so you're able to spray less of the actual product on there, which is better for phytotoxicity, any residues, things like that. So that's why we like EpiShield. Full disclosure, we now sell EpiShields, which I'm pretty excited about. One of the issues I had with Suff Oil was you had to buy giant amounts of it, or go on Amazon and buy the Monterey Garden horticultural oil. But now you can get the EpiShield product. It has a dip rate, it has a spray rate, and it does smell much better. As Brandon mentioned, you should always wear some sort of mask when you're spraying, but after you're done spraying, it's perfectly safe to be in the room, or your family, kids, whatever. So for houseplants, it's my first choice, because I saw someone mention here they had some houseplants, they got some spider mites. EpiShield would be a great option for that, to spray onto there. Make sure you get good coverage, because yes, Brandon?
I just want to add, for Suff Oil, Monterey, EpiShield, all of these, you should also be at, because that's the knockdown. That's going to, glue them in place, prevent reproduction. It's going to kill a bunch of viable adults. But you want some long-lasting reciprocal or residual, impact. So I like to tank mix Bovaria with my EpiShield, so I get not just the knockdown, but I get some residual protection as well. And I think that's a really important part of that.
Yeah, Bavaria is expensive, so that is a cost associated with the plants. For house plants, you kind of have to weigh that cost. For some people, totally worth it. For others, it may not be. The other thing to consider is, after you're done with the sprays, you could do something like some sachets or a beneficial insect release as a better way of dealing with these issues long term. Because unless you hit every single mite, they have the potential to come back. Especially, you said with your dog coming in and out, predator mites are really effective for that.
Yeah, and EpiShield's not going to hurt them if you spray and then release, some beneficial. So you always want to get your timing down. You don't want to add your bugs before a spray.
All right. Fuzzy Bunny has a good question. Good to see him on here. This is a great question because we get this a lot. When working dry amendments into the soil, should I mix them through the entire depth of the bed or just the first 6 inches or so? In my opinion, I think the first 6 inches is the way to go. And we do like to mix them into the bed versus top dressing because we want to get them broken down faster so the nutrients are available to the plants. You're just making it so the microbes have to do less work to access the nutrients. And it gets the nutrients down into the rhizosphere, exactly where the roots are, so the plants can access it faster. You could go deeper. It's not going to hurt anything, but I don't think that you need to. That's more soil disturbance also. So we always aim for the first 6 inches as a rough amount. What do you think, Brandon?
There's certain things I really like to get into the full substrate, things like phosphorus that, are going to be highly reactive and not move very far. But if you get that down into the first 6 inches, you're great. One thing I would add is when we're giving recommendations, we give them by volume of soil. And so if you just do the top 6 inches of a 12-inch bed, you might be creating a mix that's a little hot for a bare-rooted clone. So something to think about and weigh there. I tend to mix the full profile and try to manage my irrigation so that my roots will mind that. But phosphorus and pH management, I do like to try to get that mixed in pretty thoroughly. Otherwise, yeah. And you could totally just do the 6 inches, but just keep in mind that you're kind of double loading your total fertility there potentially.
Yeah, I want to throw this up because Fred Piper had a good point. Persimilis is a phenomenal option specifically for spider mites. It's one of the best predators for spider mites. So thanks for mentioning that. Yes, he also mentioned we do carry them. I see some really nice comments about us in the chat, so I just want to say thank you for those. And I keep forgetting. I'm supposed to ask you guys to like or subscribe to the channel. That helps raise our SEOs. I don't know. We're not tech guys, but I hear that's good for things.
Right.
So
hit the like.
We do appreciate it if you could do that. Thank you. All right. Next question. What are the biggest sources of chlorides in living soil? I know about compost and water. What about ocean inputs? Brandon?
Yeah. So anytime you want to think about good or bad accumulating in your soil, you want to think about application frequency and rate. And so you already nailed it with water. That's the one thing, where we almost always start, whether it's heavy metals or chlorides or sodium, just bad actors. It's probably the most frequent source of contamination. Compost, like you also mentioned, certain worm castings can be high as well. We also see ferments being high in sodium and chloride sometimes, so something to pay attention to there. But ocean products, I'm pretty sure Tad's the same way. I know he is. Like things that I used to use in my garden all the time, like kelp, that I've moved away from fish bone that I love to just regular, bovine, porcine, stuff like that, because I want to reduce sodium, I want to reduce chlorides, and I want to reduce heavy metals.
And just to give a little more context for folks who are wondering why chlorides are being brought up. So sodium is not a plant available nutrient. Brandon brought that up. All it does is raise our EC in the soil, which makes it harder for the plant. The plant has to work harder to access nutrients through osmotic pressure on the roots. Chlorides do the same. So plants do need chlorides, but they just need a small amount. And what we've been seeing on soil tests is you end up with too many chlorides. You don't need very much. So you don't need to worry about ever adding anything for chlorides. They'll show up. But we want to keep them low. And the way we do that is through clean water and reducing. You don't have to eliminate ocean inputs, but just reducing them. And then really, I know what people say water is a big one. I see it a lot with compost. I see some composts that are really high in chlorides. So that's what you really want to watch for. And that typically is an issue in very arid environments. So if you live, like we saw it when we were doing some work with some people in Australia and also some people in Malawi, very hard to get compost or inputs that are low in sodium and chloride. So sometimes you just have to deal with it. And there's ways to, utilizing gypsum and other things, raising calcium to sort of deal with that issue. So I just want to throw that out there. All right. So I saw there was some more stuff here around. Scotty came back with a question or a comment, I guess, that he was using wettable sulfur and it didn't work. He used Dr. Zymes, didn't work. Essential oils with Dr. Zyme. I assume that's Dr. Zyme dips and all, still finding them. I would kill everything and start over, but I have some cool stuff to, I guess, keep safe. I think we're still talking about house plants, but I guess this would apply either way. One thing that someone else mentioned, and the very first thing that you want to know and think about is never mix sulfur with oils. That's something I know Brandon talks about quite a bit. You need to really wash your plant thoroughly, rinse it. And typically there's a period of like week or longer because you can get really, really bad phytotoxicity from that. So never mix those two.
And never put oil in your substrate. The oil goes on the plant, not in the root zone.
Yeah. Though I did just interestingly enough, yes, I had a really good conversation with Julie Gretsch, who is a pathologist over at Bioworks, and I'm going to be releasing the podcast soon, but it was all about entomopathic fungi and which are things like Bavaria. And we were talking about them. And one of the things she mentioned was for root aphids, they did do a trial in Canada where they were really bad and they applied Sufoil X to the soil itself, which obviously is not optimal, but it was a good way to get high mortality rates of the root aphids. So it was sort of like a last case scenario option that did have some efficacy. I'd have to look up what the rates were.
I'm going to keep people posted, but I do want to say that I'm having, knock on rocks, I'm having some pretty good success in getting rid of my root aphids. So I'll keep people posted. I got a long way to go. But
yeah.
Oh.
So I would, Scotty, when going back to your question though, I think the best thing to do, if it were me, is I would probably, I mean, I don't know what you have on hand, and I'm always trying to think of that first, but something like EpiShield, I think it's like $30. It's going to make up like 50 or 60 gallons. So it'll last the average person a really, really long time. I would spray that and spray it every 3 days and make sure you're getting really good coverage, top and bottom of leaf, with a good sprayer. And then follow that up with a release of Persimilis. And I think that will give you the best opportunity to really knock them back. Now, if your plants are, small and you can dip them, I was looking around to see if I had anything to demonstrate with, but if you have a houseplant that you can dip, and again, we're talking about the above the phyllosphere, the above soil part, you're not dipping the soil. That would be a good way to make sure you're getting really good coverage. And then you need to use the dip rate for that. But
I'll take a paper towel and stuff it into the pot so I don't lose all the soil, turn it upside down and just shake it in a bucket.
I would think with that, you should be able to get pretty good control of the spider mites, but you might just have your dog might be bringing them in every day. And so that might be part of the issue too. So
the spider mite life cycles, it can be as fast as 7 days with hot temperatures. So a grow room. So if you're spraying with EpiShield at 3 mils per gallon twice a week, you would have pretty good control. But the Persimilis are one of the best specialists that we have, and they're very effective. So I might do like 3 or 4 sprays, like spray Monday, spray Wednesday, spray Sunday, spray Tuesday, and then your bugs arrive Wednesday, apply your beneficials and let them continue to clean up. There's not going to be much for them to find in that room, I would think.
Yeah. All right, question. Have you used MicroBlift BMC? If so, how many drops or milliliters per gallon? I have not used that product, so I can't really talk about it. All I can tell you is I'm pretty sure I've opened a bottle in the past, and that stuff reeked like nothing I've ever smelled before. That's not a good or bad. It's just I don't have a very good sense of smell, so if it was like memorable to me, I know I know
Right.
it's strong stuff. But yeah, I haven't used it, so I can't speak to it. The products that we use from a microbial perspective, for nutrient cycling, plant benefit, in the past have been Mammoth P and Microbial Mass. I know those two companies. It's not to say that they're better. I've worked with them and I know the owners and how they were established, and so I just have more confidence in using those products. Skynets, appreciate the advice. I will try to set up the live earlier. That's a good idea. And any advice you guys have to help us get the word out, I do appreciate all, because we are plant guys. We're not tech guys. We're a small company. It's not our strength. How is the Ole Mountain fish compost with chloride? It's okay. I think you mean Ole, like
Yeah. Olympic Mountain.
Olympic. Yeah. But
It
we
used to
moved
be
away
better.
from it.
It used to
It
be
did.
better. It's gone
did.
downhill.
I think they might have changed some of their processes. We've actually stopped carrying it and using it in our soil mixes because of not so much the chlorides, more because of the plastics we were finding in it. So a lot of these guys use a small amount of post-consumer waste, and they used to really do a good job of screening their compost for it, and it would sit for 2 years before they even released it. So we now moved to 2 different companies. Lane Reforest Products, I think, is the name they go by, and then Seacoast Compost. And so we work with both of those companies and are much happier with the quality of the compost we're getting. But it took us a long time to figure that out. It is hard to find a good compost company, and that's hard to switch.
Well, and to their credit, I feel bad for them because the majority of their product that they were processing was from the salmon runs, which is
Yeah.
something that all organic folks, wish they had access to. But then because of environmental issues, they shut down the salmon run for 2 years, and they had to audible, and they were getting a lot of like municipal waste, is my understanding. I could be wrong, but that's my understanding. And so it just opens them up to a lot more variability, and it just illustrates, like, honestly, how tough it is for folks, like yourself, to have a company that there's always audibles that are out of our control.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely part of it. They're also just really hard to work with. I'll be honest. I struggled with them as a company. They weren't very good at communicating. So yeah, we just decided to go a different direction. If you have it though, don't feel like you can't use it.
No, it's still bioavailable, good stuff.
Man, this Cannabis Critic Jeff, this is the toughest question. This is almost more of a demo than a conversation, but one of the things, there are some tools that may help with this, something like a volumetric sensor, like the Blue Lab pulse meter, or something like tensiometer, like the Blue Mat moisture meter. So Blue Lab and Blue Mat, 2 different products, or something like an aerometer. All of those things will measure your moisture level in your soil. Don't get one of those cheap ones off of Amazon that says like wet to, that does pH and all those things. Those things are junk. So that's just a waste of money.
Right.
The minimum you're probably going to spend nowadays on something is probably like $80 to $100, but that would give you a tool to tell you how you're watered. Lacking a tool like that, picking up a container and getting an idea for feeling when it's, and even using a scale to weigh it is a great tool as well, to say this is wet and this is cold. So using your finger, picking up the pot and learning slowly. But you want to water in smaller containers. I don't worry so much about runoff. It's going to happen. You need it. But as you get to larger containers, I look for less and less runoff. Like if you had a tray, just to give you an idea, like a tray under a pot. See, I got Brandon's begonia here that actually is probably due for a watering. I can typically water this till I get a little bit of runoff in here, and then I know that I'm done watering. So that's not a lot of water, and that's going to actually suck back up into there as the plant utilizes the water that's going into the container. But that's really as much runoff as I need when I water a plant like this. So if it's always better to water slowly rather than trying to go quickly, you can always come back to the same pot and give it more water. and see how well it accepted the water that you gave it. What do you want to say about watering different size containers, Brandon? Oh, Brandon's frozen. All right, maybe he'll rejoin us soon, unless that's coming through on my end, but I think it's Brandon. So I will continue on, and hopefully he gets back to us here soon. All right, is Blue Mat irrigation system able to irrigate an outdoor area of 80 square feet with 24 plants? Oh, Brandon's rejoining us. Let me kick you out. All right.
Back? Yeah.
You're back.
Sorry. Yeah, my computer's doing something crazy, so I'm on my phone now.
All right. Do you want to, before we get into the next question, do you want to answer this one about watering?
Yeah, so
I already answered it. Was there anything you wanted to add? I guess I don't know what you caught.
it just started right when you started. It started getting real echoey, and
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's not.
But yeah, it's typical.
Let's not go
Pot
back over it
lifts,
again.
all those. I'm sure you talked about pot lifts. I'm sure you talked about different, tensiometers, different meters. But it's where art and science really meet the hardest in cultivation, and there's just no. You got to have the experience. You just got to do it, and then I would say that the important thing to keep in mind is you're not going to kill a plant by watering it too much one time. You can put 100 gallons in a 1 gallon. Just don't water it again until it needs to be watered. You want to water thoroughly in containers, but you don't want to water it again until it needs water.
All right. So Greek 5425 asked about the Blue Mat irrigation system. Yes, it absolutely could water that. There's pros and cons to Blue Mats. The good thing about Blue Mats is that they're very effective at maintaining a moisture level at whatever you set it at, but you can have issues with the sensors, with the tubing, things like that. So there is a learning curve to it, I guess, is all I would say. For an outdoor area, like in my garden, in my outdoor area, I just did a traditional drip system that I controlled and turned on and off. But if you wanted something that could maintain for, high value crop, a much tighter window where you're not getting as many, wet and dry cycles, because the sensor is handling that, that's a great option. So yeah. And, reach out. Dr. Ben Higgins, who works with us, could easily make a custom design for you for your layout and get you a quote if that's something you're looking for.
I talk to a lot of people who I'm like, oh, you should try Blue Mats. And they're like, oh, I've got them. They're in a box in my garage. And I'm like, okay, well, reach out to Ben, because we jokingly call him the Blue Mat Whisperer. And I've seen him go from like a 3-hour setup and breakdown to like a 45-minute setup and breakdown for folks. He's just done it so many times on scale. They're not set it and forget it, but he's really good at it.
They have improved the tape, the blue soak tape. So that is one thing that if that was an issue before, they do have a new way of doing that is a little bit better. So it is worth revisiting at least. Yeah, this is good advice. I think the guy before, Scotty, was talking about his house plants, but yeah, your dog is a vector coming in and out of your grow room. You're a vector, and your guests are vectors. So clean shoes, clean clothes. Obviously the dogs fur. Speaking of dogs, let me see here. Let's see if this is good timing for you. This is my puppy.
What, you got a name yet?
Yeah, this is Winston. And then with my daughter, awesome. Kaya. So yeah, awesome. That's the kid and the dog. So there was someone asked.
Adorable. It looks like a teddy bear.
Yeah, he's pretty cute. He's a little barky right now, though. He's usually pretty good, but my wife's working on training. He's only 13 weeks old, so he's still learning everything. All right, here's a good one. Moving on. Cannabis critic Jeff asks, Trichoderma versus Mycorrhiza. I just want to say those are very different microbes with very different functional effects on plants and relationships with the plants. So Brandon, do you want to talk about Trichoderma, and then I could cover Mycorrhiza?
Sure. So Trichoderma does a bunch of different things, and that's, both of these products, or not products, both of these things do multiple things. I like to put Trichoderma in my beds because, granted, I've got the biggest forehead in this room, but I guarantee everybody in here's got Pythium, Fusarium, and Botrytis on their foreheads. Like, it's in our environments. You can't exclude it. And so I use Trichoderma to kind of prevent any of these bad actors from getting a foothold in my beds. I like it because it helps cycle, it chelates iron. Trichoderma does a bunch of different things for us, but I primarily do it as a prophylactic integrated pest management thing.
It's going to outcompete a lot of pathogens for space in the soil or on the leaf surface. That's why people utilize Trichoderma. It's a very aggressive microbe. Mycorrhizal fungi is totally different. So it's a particular type of fungus that forms a symbiotic relationship with the roots of your plant. Now, with cannabis specifically, we're talking about endomycorrhizal mycorrhizal fungi. Endo means inside of, so it actually infects inside the root tip itself. It's not visible by the naked eye. So when you see people that you see pictures of like white fuzzy looking roots that looks almost like like a fish skeleton. That's not mycorrhizal fungi. That you don't know if that's infected or inoculated at all. That's just healthy root hairs. You can only view it through microscope staining. But the reason people would utilize mycorrhizal fungi is because it helps with nutrient uptake, primarily with phosphorus, which is one of the hardest nutrients to cycle for plants. So that's why people like it. It sort of unlocks phosphorus. It helps with drought stress because it allows the plant to essentially reach further into the soil, get greater surface area to cover. So it allows for help with water stress, drought stress, heat stress, a lot of those different things. So it has a very beneficial relationship with plants. To people, all the research shows you get better growth and yields utilizing mycorrhizal fungi. Now, because it helps with uptake, the one thing to caution folks on is it can increase the uptake of heavy metals. So if you are in a regulated state with a commercial grow, if you're in Canada, for example, I would suggest probably not adding mycorrhizal fungi because we don't want to increase our uptake rates of these heavy metals. Potentially, it depends on how you're managing the soil, but that would be a deeper conversation. So this cycle in my grow, which let me see, I can probably pull up a photo of from today. I actually added mycorrhizal fungi to it very intentionally because I knew that I wasn't going to be tested for heavy metals. I knew where my soil was starting and I wasn't worried about it from a health perspective. This is, I was just talking to Brandon before. This is what's left of my plants that need to be harvested here pretty soon. So Brandon's going to come up. We're going to take all this down here really soon. But this crop, I did add mycorrhizal fungi to because I had it on hand and I wanted to use it up, and I knew it was good for my plants, and I wasn't worried about heavy metals. So yeah, and not all mycorrhiza fungi and trichoderma are the same. So you need to have a good source, and keep in mind, like one might have been sourced from Israel, another one might have been sourced. So it was used to like arid, very like heat stressed environments. Another one might have been sourced from here in the United States that might have come from a very wet area. And so it might have very different ecological niches that it occupies, even if it's the same species of mycorrhizal fungi. So it's complicated. Don't just look at a label and think that's exactly what you're getting, or that whether or not it's going to be effective. So you might have to try a few different products on the microbial side to really see how they respond. And same thing goes for trichoderma.
Yeah, I like Root Shield WP and Dynamico. Those are just my personal preferences. And I know Tad doesn't like to do this, but I'll plug it. A lot of the products that we do talk about, we're not, one of the first things Tad told me when I joined KiS is just don't try to sell anything to anybody. And I appreciate that. And so we're
I
not
don't know
trying
if I
to
said
do
it
this
quite
to,
like that, but
yeah,
all right.
but pretty much. And so, a lot of times we talk about products that we use, that we've tested, we know they're safe, we know they're effective. And, and as usual, there's some data and some science behind it. And Tad already talked about this a little bit about how great Mycorrhiza is at helping make phosphorus available, which is completely true and a great reason to have it in your beds. You want to get that mycorrhizal infection before you have adequate available phosphorus. If you wait until your plant has adequate phosphorus, it may very well, highly likely that it won't make that infection. And so it won't make that relationship. So you want to, like I just put a tray down, throw out mycorrhiza in the tray, and then I take my bare rooted clones and I just set them down there, and I know that they've been, in direct contact with the mycorrhiza. And then I can put them into, a 4-inch, or, I can put them into a bed or whatever, but I want to get a jump start on that infection before they get available phosphorus.
That's a good point. I have a whole blog post on our website if people want to read more. So available phosphate will limit mycorrhizal infection. That's a really good point. And so an example of this would be if I was pHing with phosphoric acid or using fish hydrolysate, which has phosphoric acid, to feed my plants early on. They may say, hey, I don't need this mycorrhizal infection, connection, symbiosis, and not form it. So you just want to be smart about it. So yeah, it's a one-time application early on in the plant's life. I just sprinkle it whenever I transplant. I just put it into the root system right there in the hole, so I know the roots are going to come in contact with it. Brandon's way works too. You can even coat your seeds. There's a lot of ways to do it. Cool. All right. Great question. Okay, Carno BX1 asks, I have 8 15-gallon pots that I flower in. What is the best way to re-amend without a soil test? I can't afford 8 tests. All right, let me stop right there. If you treated all the pots the same, you could do 1 soil test, sample out of all of them. It's going to give you a good enough result. You don't need to take 8 tests. Even if you could afford it, I would tell you not to do it. I think it's a waste of money. Same thing goes for a lot of our guys, like Mako Farm. He's a good buddy of ours. You may follow him on Instagram. He does 1 test for that whole room that you see. So that's, very affordable on scale as a commercial grower. You don't need to test every bed on the commercial side either. So if you have all your plants in the same room, typically 1 test is enough. You're just going to be careful about sampling from all the beds to make sure, all the pots to make sure you get an accurate one. So right there, that would help with the cost. I just cut it by 1/8.
And if you want to be super uptight and really dialed in, dump all of those 8 pots out onto a tarp and mix all that soil together really thoroughly, and then send off 1 sample, and you'll be able to, with a high degree of confidence, address all of your pots. It might, you could leave it out until you get your report back, mix all of your amendments back in while it's on that tarp or in a big container. That's, for the people who are super uptight about it like me, that's one way to do it.
Yeah. Otherwise, yeah, you could top dress with our nutrient pack. That's sort of what it was designed for. You may want to also mid-cycle, depending on your nitrogen levels, switch over to something like our bloom booster or a different, a bloom booster that's lower in nitrogen, but still providing phosphorus and potassium. Because mid to late cycle, you really don't want a lot of nitrogen going into the plants. That can cause reduction of yields, leggy plants, overly green plants, like an excessive amount of chlorophyll. So this last grow that I just showed the picture of, I did not soil test that one. I amended actually at a lower rate with our nutrient pack and went for it. And I had less confidence in how the plants were going to finish from a fertility perspective, but they did well. And this next cycle around, I'll probably do another soil test just to make sure nothing's getting really out of balance. But you do have a pretty big buffering window where I've seen healthy plants in soil test results that are less than optimal. So If you can't afford the soil test, you could absolutely just go with a generalized fertilizer program like our nutrient pack.
One of the frustrations or knocks on organics that I hear a lot is that it takes a long time for things to become available. And it really comes down to the individual element. If you just need some potassium, you can do some potassium sulfate in solution, or some gypsum for calcium, or some Epsom for magnesium. It's really just phosphorus and nitrogen that there's a cycling time, and there's cheats to that. There's ways around that. You could use something really highly soluble like blood meal, or you could use fish hydrolysate for, specifically like Pacific Grow CFOS. It's high in phosphorus because, as Tad mentioned, nitrogen does a bunch of things that we don't want at the end of the round if it's excessive. It'll delay finish. It will reduce your terpenes. It'll impact your harvest metric. So there's, you don't want those wide internodes like Tad mentioned. So it really comes down to the individual element.
All right, I got some good comments here. I'm just going to throw up. Yeah, don't do a soil drench with neem oil. That is a terrible idea. Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. Advice from Skate Guitar Gardening. I like that. Yes, bigger pots are always going to make things easier. You're going to have less issues. It is, we have to buy more soil, but everyone I know no one I know who's gone to bigger pots has regretted it, or beds even. That's why we typically recommend those things. Oh, this is a good question from Scotty as a follow-up. Will the predator mites die off before flower, or do you have to wash them up? There has to be poop or frass from both. Yeah, they will die off once they no longer have a pest, a food source, which is the target pest typically. So if they ate all the spider mites in the room, in theory, or a significant majority of them, they will starve to death, which is ultimately what you want. If you have a healthy population of predator mites and that don't feed on, say, pollen or some other source that you're managing, that tells you that you have an ongoing pest pressure or problem that you're not solving with them. We don't wash them off. They don't really want to hang out in the trichomes and the buds. They will leave after when you go to harvest for the most part. Yeah, there's probably some insect poop in there. That's a valid thing. Like, I'm dealing with thrips right now. There's probably some thrip poop and thrips that are going to make it into the final harvest, but we don't wash them. I am talking with Cannabis Chem Lab about doing an experiment with a variety of different washing recipes that we see on the internet and how that impacts the cannabinoid tests that they run on it. So I hadn't told you about this, Brandon, but this was the latest experiment I suggested to them that I thought would be fun content, because people do ask about washing. We wash our vegetables. Why don't we wash our cannabis? I wouldn't worry. I mean, we're talking about really, really small amounts of insect frass. I don't think there's any that I know of any risk or reason to worry about it, but I have seen recipes that people have around washing.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessary. And as far as like Tad said, that, like those bugs, like, what do you do when you get hungry? Well, you look in the cupboard. Well, if there's nothing there, you go to the store. And so they're going to look around, and they don't want to be exposed, and they don't want to be out on these apical points where all the buds are, because that's where all the light is. So that's not the best place for them. It's most comfortable. And so I wouldn't worry about it too much. And, rove beetles, on the other hand, I have seen those get out of hand and be a problem in the buds. So that's something to keep in mind. You could always mass trap those with sticky cards or something, but something to keep in mind.
All right. Sorry, I got distracted here. Fuzzy Bunny says he's smoking on Brandon's genetics. Awesome.
Thank you, bro. Love it.
Fried Piper suggested mixing them all together and then taking a sample, like Brandon said. That's great advice.
Yeah.
Ortho Bug Clear soil drench will nuke root aphids. You would have to check. I don't think cannabis is on the list for approved crops for that product. I was looking it up. It looks like it's got bifenthrin and some other things in there. I just don't know, with cannabis being a
Bifenthrin's
pretty
definitely
heavy.
off the table for cannabis.
There are ways to do it. They may be a little bit more expensive than this, but they're probably a lot safer, because at the end of the day, you want to
I
have a
would
safe
love to
crop.
use
So
systemics. I would
yeah,
love to. Um, it just with root aphids, I'm learning that this is going to be a brutal lesson in patience because I'm just going to have to do the work. There's just no way around it.
yeah. Oh, so yeah, he then mentions, I'm not picking on you, Trey. I'm not picking on you. I was just looking it up. So yeah, yeah. So not organic, and just be careful with any pesticide that you're using. You got to research it and make sure that it's safe, and you need to follow the label instructions. A lot of times people get in trouble, and I'll just tell on myself. When I first started using pesticides, decades ago, for even things like neem oil, I always went light on the application rate, thinking that I was being, a better steward of the earth and doing a better job by using less of the product. All I was doing was creating resistance to whatever it was, whatever pesticide I was spraying, because I wasn't getting the mortality rates that I needed. You want to make sure you guys kill as many as you can using the lowest rate possible. And that's what they figured out for you with these label rates. So always important to follow everything on the label.
And
All
I
right.
will say that labels, I just got a jug of something today, and when you pull these little labels off and you pull out these accordion folders, and you're like, oh my God, I got to read this whole thing.
Yeah.
In this day and age, just jump on Google and ask what's the 1 gallon application rate for the pest that you're going for, and it will 9 times out of 10 it'll pull up. Don't follow what AI says. It should pull up with the manufacturer. Like if you look up, Epishield, how much should I use for XYZ? It'll tell you, and it'll take you to the manufacturer's page. So I understand those are hard to read sometimes, but you can just pull it right off their page usually.
Yeah. I just throw this one up because it made me laugh. I think you can do organics without it being stinky. Yes, there are absolutely some very smelly inputs that I can think of off the top of my head, like fish hydrolysate and a lot of the fish products in general. But there's other stuff you can use that's not smelly. Alfalfa doesn't really smell, for example. Yeah. So anyway,
Yeah.
not everything with organics is stinky, and some of the chemical stuff, those bottled nutrients, are pretty awful smelling too. So it goes both ways. And with bottled nutrients, you have to measure all that shit all the time, and that takes a lot of time. And you don't want to be doing that in your bedroom. At least I wouldn't. It's pretty easy to have a soil run it and not have to worry about all that extra work. Okay. Yeah. Let's see here. Uses the seacoasts and loves it.
Awesome.
Penny says he uses the microbe lift for fungus gnats. That's a good way to do it. That's okay. So he's had good success with that.
Nice.
I will say fungus gnats is probably one of the easiest things to deal with. I really like BTI, which is like the mosquito dunks. The Bacillus thuringiensis israeliensis is a great option. But yeah, if it's working, that's great.
Yeah. BTI or nematodes. Be careful with your irrigation.
Sorry, I am catching up with everything people is writing. All right, here we go. Brandon, Alpha Omega asks, I have access to limestone and sandstone dust. Do you think it would be a reliable, good source of silica and calcium?
So I would say the limestone is a great source of calcium, but it's going to raise your pH. And so I know Tad's on board with me on this one. We prefer gypsum for a calcium source. It's highly soluble, and it's not going to drag your pH.
Well, with
Go
a
ahead.
caveat, sorry, I just want to add something. We like calcitic lime, calcium carbonate, when mixing soils to raise the pH of the peat moss if you're starting with peat moss. If you're starting with coco coir, something with a higher pH, then it's probably something to be avoided. Sorry, keep going.
No, that's good. And then the sandstone, I don't think that's going to release available silica just without knowing I would think it's probably in some sort of tied up crystalline form there. That's not going to be, particularly available. We'd have to know exactly what was in the parent material. So I apologize, but I can't really answer that one.
Yeah, I would say adding it, it probably does contain silica. Most sand does. It is probably like quartz or a crystalline form that's not readily available. But if you
That's
want to
my
throw it
thought.
in there down
Yeah.
the road, it will eventually become available. But it
It'll
may be
help with
months to
aeration,
years.
you know.
It may be bringing in other stuff though too that you may not want if maybe it's high in boron or heavy metals, arsenic, things like that. So having a test of it would be a good idea before you add any sort of rock dust or mined product to your soil.
Yeah. And be careful getting stuff, like I know folks that have gotten like limestone, sandstone, but they got it from people that like cut countertops and stuff. So they got all kinds of plastic with that. They got all kinds. I mean, there's some super toxic countertop stuff that we use in the United States. I definitely wouldn't want it on my counter or in my grow. So just be careful of the source.
Sorry, I got distracted. I've seen this product. I am highly skeptical of it. I'm just going to be honest. I read about it. There's not a lot. I haven't seen any research on it. It seems like it's all anecdotal testimonials and things like that. That being said, maybe there's more that exists. If you like it, it's probably not going to hurt anything. If you're at the rates that you're using it, I just can't imagine it's doing anything.
What is it? I don't know this product.
I just pulled it up. So it's a unique formulation of concentrated, naturally occurring ionic mineral salts, which neutralizes and assists in reduction of over 250 contaminant. It reduces lead, chlorine, and fluoride to non-detectable levels. How would it do that? Up to 99% of agricultural and industrial chemicals, 99% of pharmaceuticals, and much more. It contains a broad spectrum of minerals like calcium, phosphorus, potassium, magnesium, which help enhance the flavor of water. Clean, contaminant-free drinking water is the foundation of good health. Drops of balance help reduce up to 50 times more contaminants than conventional brands, while containing natural ionic minerals provide you with cleaner, healthier, better tasting water. I just don't see how
claim, man.
it would do any of those things.
I don't understand the chemistry of any of that at surface level, but
we have to use filters to physically, mechanically remove a lot of these things.
That's a heady claim that
where's it going? Like where's the heavy metals and everything going with it? I just don't know. Or the pharmaceuticals, like if you're just adding something to it, you're not removing it. So maybe I misunderstand the product. Again, This is just, I remember reading it and I had a lot of red flags pop up. But some people are using it here. This guy's using it and thinks it's decent. So yeah, it's probably not hurting anything other than your pocketbook. And if I am wrong, please do let me know. Send me the research. I would love to see it.
Yep.
Okay. Trey Roberts says blue mats are very effective. They have multiple ways to install them. Yes. So yeah, there's a lot we can do with them depending on your layout. I love that they're customizable. I would suggest do not go on their website and try to order something to set up your own layout. There's a lot of people, including us, that will do that for you for free, that understand all the little parts and pieces and how it goes together. It's confusing if you've never used them before and very daunting, and it's easy to screw it up. So just get someone like us or someone else to make you a layout for your garden, and then you can at least what will show up will actually work for you. Let's see here. Oh, we got another Kai. So I spell my daughter's name Kaia, but I do know a lot of people spell it like this too, and there's even some weed relate, 420 related connection there. But that's awesome. I love that name, obviously. Oh yeah, Bob Marley uses Kaya. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, kaya. It means weed. It's
Yeah,
slang for herb.
yeah, that's right. That's awesome.
Yeah, when I first met you, I thought that it was Kaya.
Yeah, I do hear that. Actually, this is this is a dumb story, but if any of you are old enough to have ever seen the movie Willow, Val Kilmer, one of his first movies, Willow, the little guy in the movie, the main character, his wife's name was Kaya, and I remember hearing that when I was like in high school. It was like one of my favorite movies, and I just thought it was a cool name, and I was like, someday I want to name my daughter Kaya. So that's where it came from for me. But yeah, your story's probably cooler.
Uh,
So
I
my wife had
named
never
my-
seen the movie, and then I showed it to her. She's not an attractive woman in the movie, his wife,
right.
but it's pretty great.
So that's really funny that I named my youngest Mateo after a guy that I went to high school with named Teo, and like he was like 4 years ahead of us. I was on the soccer team. He had just graduated from my high school. He always had really good weed. He'd go play tournaments with us and stuff. But we always thought he was the super cool kid. So that's why I went for that name for my kid.
Nice.
Yeah, funny.
Yeah. All right, I'm just catching up on comments here. I know we're getting a little low on time. I think what Skynuts is referring to is there was a paper, I think it was out of Florida, that showed that Trichoderma inhibited mycorrhizal infection. And there were a lot of products on the market that have contained Trichoderma and mycorrhizal fungi in very different ratios. Like there'd be like 1.2 million spores of Trichoderma and 60 spores of mycorrhiza in the same product, because mycorrhizal spores are larger, they're more expensive. Long story short, there's new research that shows that certain strains of Trichoderma are actually symbiotic with mycorrhizal fungi. And I was very skeptical of this, but I've talked to enough pathologists now and asked them this question. In fact, I did an interview with Dr. Yoram Kapolnik with the Volcani Institute on the Cannabis Cultivation and Science podcast. If you want to learn more about mycorrhizal fungi, that's the best interview I've done on it. I've done a few on mycorrhizal fungi, but that was the best one. You can check it out. And he talks about this because this was one of the questions I had too, because I had heard that as well. So if you're noticing a gray fuzz after adding an endomycorrhizal fungi, you're probably getting some sort of gray mold growth.
Overwatered, probably.
That's a possibility on the top of the soil. Yeah, I don't think that's related to the mycorrhiza itself unless it's a food source.
It'd be white and you wouldn't be able to see it. And so you can just turn that soil over. If it's in tiny little pots, this is one of the like kind of mythology things that actually works is and has science behind it is you can dust little seeds in their soil with cinnamon because it'll those molds.
Sorry, I'm catching up here. I haven't used Rootwise. I know it's always good to look at the label to see what sort of concentrations of microbes you're getting, but then also third-party verification that what they say is on the label is actually on there. The Oregon Department of Ag has a really great website. I don't know if they've tested this product, but they've tested a lot of these products, and basically you can go on there and look. It's free information. A lot of these micro products don't have the concentrations that they claim, so you may not even be getting what you think you're getting in a lot of cases.
Yeah, if you don't have, just because it's on the label, if you don't have enough colony forming units, CFUs, it may just be completely worthless.
Mycorrhiza, Trichoderma, Bacillus, those could all be the same product. Make sure that you're actually getting endomycorrhiza fungi, and specifically Rhizophagus irregularis, which is also known as Glomus intraradices, depending on, it's the same species it just depends on how they put it on the label. But there's a few different ones like Glomus Mossier, and I can never pronounce it. Glomus deserticola. Most things in the Glomus species will work with cannabis. But if you see ectomycorrhiza on there, those things just don't have a relationship with cannabis. They work with conifers. So you're wasting your money, adding them to your soil. So that's where doing a little more research could matter. So the type of mycorrhiza makes a huge difference.
And I would also add that, like, if you go to like the BioWorks website and look up a product like Root Shield Trichoderma and a product like cease Bacillus subtilis, they'll tell you how far apart you should apply those so that one is not negatively impacting the other. I would not personally um, add those together at the same time based on the information I've gotten from BioWorks. So I would wonder if maybe those are canceling each, compete. One's becoming a food source for the other. Same reason I might not add
It could be in a
biology.
dormant form too, though.
Yeah, true. But yeah, interesting.
Earthman 419 asks, if I'm going on 3 runs in my no-till tub, is it okay to remove root balls to make room?
Please
Yes, absolutely.
get them
And
out
by
of there.
removing the root ball, you're going to remove the highest amount of any sort of like viroid load, pathogen load, heavy metal load. All of those things are going to be most highly concentrated in the root ball. So by removing it, you're taking it out of your system so that it's not breaking back down and ending up in your next plant. Now, people are going to say, well, I don't have those things. Everyone probably has a little bit of a pathogen load. So, things like Pythium, Fusarium, those sorts of things are around. And so removing your root ball is probably going to lower that load, even if you're not seeing visible symptoms. Over time, it could become more of an issue.
Yep. Yeah, because that's how those things work. Is you finally get to a tipping point where that bad actor, that fungal pathogen or whatever, starts to take over. And so instead of the trichoderma, being the main biology or whatever productive biology you've put in there, it tips the scale, and then you see the problem all over, at once.
Yeah. On that note, I had a guy this week call that wanted to know if we could test his soil for hop latent viroid because he had some plants that just weren't performing well. And basically, where we landed was I said, testing soil is not a reliable way for testing for hop latent viroid. The lab we work with, Three Rivers, can test root fragments. And sure, you could pull root fragments out of your soil, but the best thing to do would be to take the most recently harvested plant and take the roots off of that, because that's going to give you the highest chance of a positive test result. And then at that point, you can assume that the soil contains hop latent viroid.
Did they give
So,
you a target on how old those roots need to be? Because I know that target's been adjusted over the last several years.
no, that's a good question to figure out too. But there's I couldn't see any good reason to test just the soil at this point. So, assuming they even could, we really want to test root fragments, is sort of what I'm getting at when we're talking about hop latent viroid.
Right.
All right, Brandon, we're running out of time. I'll take a few more questions, but this one's right up your alley. I know you like to talk about it. So, does bud ripeness affect ash color? If so, can burning sample buds be used to gauge ripeness?
Yeah. So I jumped like
This is a little different angle here, but this is an interesting question.
yeah, I jumped waist deep in Gabby's craft grower network on this one, and everybody's like, "Oh no, don't do it, don't do it." But there's a lot of science behind it, and so ripeness, this is not a way that I've ever looked at it, so I don't want to just give an answer without thinking about it. Ripeness could potentially impact ash because over time, as your buds become, so what's the primary impacts for or factors that create ash color is how well everything is completely combusted, and that's what gives you white ash. Everything burns white if it burns fully, aside from carbon. And so if it burns completely, and that's why they add magnets to cigarettes, so that, that's why people light their beds on fire, because the cigarette just keeps burning after they fall asleep, because they've got these accelerants on there. And so that's why it burns, because it burns hotter and faster. And we don't want that in cannabis. We don't want hotter and faster, and we don't want weird additives, especially us in this organic room here. So what it comes down to is basically the moisture level and the resin content are the two primary factors that are going to determine how completely that's going to burn. And so if you've got super oily herb, it very well it's going to give you, salt and pepper ash. If you've got, you could take the worst herb in the world and go throw it in your car in July and let it get bone dry. It's going to burn perfectly white. I don't understand the obsession with it. I've never looked in the toilet to see if I enjoyed my meal. It doesn't have anything to do with how I experience or enjoy cannabis. If you can get more money for it in your market, I say pursue it, but it has more to do with the cure than anything. And so as far as ripeness is concerned, as the bud becomes more mature and develops more trichomes, it could the ash could start to be darker as but it would come down to each individual cure. um yeah,
The,
I don't see that as being a reliable way to gauge ripeness. And then we should discuss what's ripe. Are we going after THC numbers, because those are usually a little bit higher before the ultimate terpenes. Terpenes and THC don't go hand in hand in the development of most cultivars. And so that's another part of that equation, because I let mine run long. I don't care about THC. I care about flavor.
yeah, the more I learn, I feel like the less I know in terms of gauging when a plant is done. Because it was, you could look at the clarity or color of the trichomes. If it was clear, it wasn't quite ready, and then you would get, it was milky and then amber, and then we'd want a mix of those, and you could kind of quantify that. But I've seen some research more recently that showed that didn't correlate well with THC or terpene levels. And then, some more recent research that was actually published showed that trichome density, we see these really frosty buds, that doesn't correlate with THC or secondary metabolite production. So that doesn't really tell us anything. I think for me, where I'm at is it's really like knowing your cultivar and then knowing how long it needs to flower, like day length. So maybe that first cycle you're clipping off at different periods and running that plant longer and seeing which one you like the best or which one gives you the effect you like. Because like Brandon said, secondary metabolites will change as the plant matures or senesces, however you want to look at it. So that's a complicated question, and I don't think there's a straight answer across the board, but I don't think ash color is a great way of determining ripeness at
It's
this point in
also
time.
it's a very modern question, because I think back, you just said, you nailed it when you said you have to learn your cultivar. We back in the day, we only had, like somebody that really was on top of it might have four different cultivars, and then you were like, holy crap, how do you do that? How do you keep four cultivars, when we were getting started? And so you had one cut, if you were lucky. Most of us just did bag seed forever, over and over and over again, but before cuts was even a thing. But then, you know cuts were the way to go, but you usually had one cut that was yours. And so you got to know it really well. And there was that one time you wanted to go to that concert, or your cousin was getting married, and so you chopped it early. And you kind of liked that high. So you tried it again, or you let it go late for some reason, or, and so
Mhm.
you really got to know the expression at these different times with these plants. And we don't really do that because we've got this kind of embarrassment of riches as far as genetics at our fingertips. So, I'm a glutton. I'm greedy about, cultivars.
All right, guys, I'm still catching up in the comments. Big Freak Dog, send me your recipe. Holy Toledo, send me your recipe. Mr. Faceland, send me the recipe because I would like to get the most popular ones and test for that. So that's awesome. I appreciate that. Let's see. All right. I'm going to try and speed this up because we're already over time, but it's been fun. You guys are asking great questions.
And I do know we've talked about the washing a couple of times, and like one of the growers that works with us, James, sent me some pictures of some beautiful buds before and after, you know, that both look really pretty. So yeah, I'd be really interested to see how this goes.
Okay, someone just said this recently. I had to look it up. There was a comment like this on our YouTube. The dude kind of does look like me when he was younger. I can totally see it. I had no idea who he was, but if you want to get a good kick out of it, yeah, I do kind of look like that guy. My brother, I would say, looks even more like him. So just throwing it out there.
Yeah, I would too.
All right.
I know who he is.
Let's see. We can talk about Real Growers Recharge next time. All right, Brandon, real quick from Arizona Grows, because I know he's a regular. Should AXL 16 stay in solution? I've always shook mine too. Brandon?
I always shake mine up, but it doesn't precipitate out. If it precipitates out, it could be a pH issue, and it could be a lot of folks will buy a pound, and it's a slightly different application or mix rate for the you need a little bit more. So yeah, so that actually wouldn't create the issue because you'd have more water than you need, if anything. Yeah, I don't know. Mine never falls out of solution, but I do shake it up. You know, send me an email and I'll maybe we can talk about this next time. But there's some pH notes that we could go into with silica. Maybe that's it.
Spencer, send me the study. I'd really like to see it. I have seen ones. I haven't seen one with Dynomyco. So yeah, please do send that over. Greek, yes, pH does need to be adjusted with silica, even in living soils. Yes, that is something to do.
It'll have a really strong pH.
Yeah, it's best to. Again, optimally. All right, real quick. TMV is not really an issue in cannabis, tobacco mosaic virus. I wouldn't mess with nicotine water or nicotine products because you may be adding something else in there to your soil or solution that you don't want. So I would just stay away from it. Yeah, it is pretty toxic stuff. Let's see here. Okay, I think I'm mostly caught up. I just did it really fast.
Yeah. Like I know greenhouses where you're not allowed to smoke on site, you know, cigarettes and stuff, but there's never been one ID'd case of TMV in cannabis to my knowledge. Not that we won't see it, but not right now.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you guys all tuning in. Thank you so much. Yeah, we'll do this again next week. We'll see you here. Thanks again.